saw this a few times in my early years, but, my uncle was the right age. He's in his 40s back then. He loves Kurt Russell, of course. He loved The Thing. He got me all over The Thing. So it just made sense, like, that I knew about this movie.
Yeah. And it's a breezy 90 minutes. And you want to hear something interesting is that Paul Anderson wanted to shoot this movie in the desert. He wanted to make this like a sprawling, they had a $60 million budget in 98, which is pretty, big nowadays, even with inflation 20 years later. The problem was El Nino was that year, and so it just poured in LA. So anytime that they would try to build a set or do anything, it would just get poured out. So this became a completely on-stage movie. So he, at the very last minute, a very talented team that he had working on this film just worked around the clock to make this movie look somewhat reasonable. David Snyder was the art director on Blade Runner, the original Blade Runner. So these people were working inside stages and everywhere around LA trying to cover up for the rain, because it never rained in California, but it was raining all the time. So this movie, I think, would have looked great. He wanted to be like Shane, a Shane remake, but in space. Like a space western. And they had to move everything inside. And then you had Kurt Russell's ankle. You had just varying factors. And I think it kind of led to this movie just being somewhat fun. If that makes sense. It never became the epic that Anderson wanted. And he was talking about that in the commentary, which I thought was very interesting.
I'm going to agree. Yeah, this doesn't feel epic, but it does feel like a great action movie.
Yeah. Oh, no, I think it's very fun. I just think it's funny how everything, not funny, but everything just kept kicking him in the butt. And they eventually had to just, they had to just move inside. I gotta tell you some funny, can I tell you a funny story? We're all over the place, right, John? So it doesn't really matter.
Is this from your deep research dive?
Yeah, so actually this was on the commentary. And, so at the end, when they throw somebody into the snakes and those pit vipers, which actually were poisonous, those green snakes were poisonous. In the scene with Sean Pertwee and that lady, they sewed its mouth shut. You'll see it. But they had the scene where this guy gets thrown into this tank with all these snakes, and there was 350 snakes to begin with. And with each take, Paul Anderson literally said, and Jeremy Bolt, that they would lose like 17 each take. And Jason Isaacs was like, it's Hollywood. They became executives, so he was laughing. But they would lose 17. Eventually, after the take was done, they tried to round them all up, and they found all but 3 of them while they were taking the sets down. And no one wanted to take the set down because there were so many pythons. But in the end, they couldn't find 3 pythons. So they said somewhere in the studios out there, in Warner Brothers, there was 3 pythons just kind of crawling around spreading. They never found them. 3 pythons. Never found them. So it's pretty funny.
And then one day, a writer in the writer's room saw a snake going through an air vent, and then he just thought that it was because, he was drinking too much.
Yeah.
And he thought he was seeing things. And then he wrote the script for Anaconda.
They don't. Oh, man.
The best worst John Voight accent ever.
I don't know what that accent is, but I love his performance. It never gets old, man.
Creole, Brazilian, something.
Yeah, he went for it in that movie. I'll give him that. But, I mean, so this movie, though, I just thought it was really interesting how, they wanted to make it a Shane-type Western, but they couldn't do that. And then they had to bring it inside. And a lot of the takes that they had to do, they just really had to flub a lot of things because they just didn't have much space to shoot inside, and which was really hard on the director of photography and the gaffer to make it lit like it was a desert planet. And because he's like, I just wanted to shoot it outside, but it didn't work like that. But in the end, though, I mean, I think Kurt Russell does a great job in this movie. I mean, he never doesn't. Man, I wish this would have been bigger for him because he spent 18 months training for this.
What do you think that this film's reception is today? Like, if we were walking a Comic-Con and just asking, let's just say people who are 30 or 35 or older, right? Like, their opinion of the movie Soldier from 1998. Do you think that most of them would look at us and tell us that they hadn't seen it? Or do you think they'd be like, oh yeah, Kurt Russell is jacked, or this, that, and the other? Like, what do you think I really have no idea. What do you think the reception would be?
We're in such a Kurt Russell bubble, and we're such movie fanatics where we like popular movies, but we also like very obscure movies, even though this was a studio release. I think if we went around asking people at Comic-Cons, they'd be like, I haven't seen it. Or, oh yeah, I think I saw it. I think maybe 1 in 10 has heard about it.
This is a weird aside, but the other day I was watching this and I was cooking in the kitchen, and I'm posting on Facebook that I was, like cooking while watching Soldier. Well, when I go to Facebook and I say watching and you enter the movie name, I found an Indian movie called Soldier that came out in 1998, but I could not find this movie.
Oh, really?
How weird is that?
You couldn't find this? I think that's about right.
I found an Indian movie called Soldier, but that was also from 1998. But like one of their zany action probably riffs off of some Schwarzenegger movie, I guess. Like, I don't know. But I could not find this movie in any way, shape, or form on Facebook when you say like you are watching this movie, I could not enter this movie.
Because like this movie's not bad enough to be enjoyed, but it's not good enough to really be remembered. Does that make sense?
I guess so. I feel like people would remember it. I think they just haven't seen it.
Yeah. Yeah. Gary Busey's in it too. That's kind of crazy.
I've got some Busey comments, but I'll save it for when we get there.
Yeah. So I mean, also the writer, David Webb, dude, this dude wrote Unforgiven, right? He wrote Blade Runner. He wrote 12 Monkeys. He wrote Leviathan. This dude was A-list when he wrote this movie. So I guess they said El Nino kind of wrecked it. And then Anderson said that he couldn't get the look he wanted. But I don't know, man. I have fond memories of this movie.
I love this movie.
Yeah. You know that's Wyatt Russell in the beginning? So when they're kids training, they had his son Wyatt Russell running with the flag.
That's cool.
Yeah. And then another funny story, they actually had a boar on set. That giant, they were going to watch the kids. That'd be an insane fight with 3 Dobermans against a wild boar. Holy crap. I think the boar would win. I don't know. But this boar refused to get out of its cage, so they had to bring its mate closer. And then the boar got out of the cage into the big thing, and like no one could wrangle it anymore.
So I don't want to mess with it. That's a boar.
So that's the stuff they were going through on set, which I think is pretty funny. But what do you think about the opening training montages and the way they got those kids going?
So, like, but wait, I want to start with 1996 Year Zero.
Yeah.
Right? Why? Okay, so this movie came out in 1998, right? So they're letting us know this isn't like a distant future, basically, when they say, like, the project started Year Zero just before you're in the theater watching the movie, right? With the babies in the nursery of the hospital, right?
Yeah.
So, like, is that what they're going for, do you think, to let you know this is – because – and this wasn't genetic modification – for Russell's generation, this was just selecting kids at birth. But when they selected those kids, like we see them like point at the kid and that one, and like this woman looks kind of disappointed. Did that mother just watch her child get confiscated by the military?
Do you think they kind of paid people to have what do you call it when a surrogate? So maybe they just paid for surrogates.
I guess, but that woman was in there.
Yeah.
Like, I guess that just, it's movie drama, right? We're staging things. But that, like, when I'm watching that, I'm like, is that the mother watching them take her baby away? Like, it was just like those monsters.
And the soldiers are like, don't mind if I do.
Apparently, right? But, I mean, that was kind of, so they're selecting kids at birth, even though we didn't know a whole lot about genetics back then. I guess it's something about that, right? And then
I like that one.
Right, give me that one with the thick forearms. It's like it's a baby. They all have fat, thick forearms.
They should have just had a general, not in a creepy way, but just like a guy like rubbing his belly, like that one looks good. Yeah, that one. Yeah, like not one. like just like some guy go, hey, I like him. Yeah.
So then they do the emotional desensitization, I guess, right, with the dogs fighting the boar that we talked about. And you mentioned earlier it was Wyatt Russell who was running when the kids were age 12, when they were all running like Marines or whatever. Yeah. So when they're running and you see the I guess they're overseers, trainers, COs, whatever, with their binoculars from a distance watching them, did they not look like Nazis? I feel like that was deliberate.
Oh, yeah. It had to have been.
They look like Nazi scientists trying to breed super soldiers. That's really just what I thought constantly. By the way, Jason Isaacs' little mustache doesn't help that.
Yeah.
But so when the kid is lagging in the back, right, the one kid who actually looks like he's in the worst shape of all of them, but he's lagging in the back, this car zooms up and they execute this 12-year-old on the spot. And all I can think is, what if he had the flu?
Yep.
Like, what if he was actually the best runner out of all of them, except he had the flu?
And aren't they training him? Like, aren't they gauging how much the kid eats? Like, are they allowing them like a Sunday? Like, why are they? Why is this kid? Even if the kid doesn't have the flu, why is this kid out of shape?
Maybe I'm not being fair though. If these really are like Nazi scientists making super soldiers, they're inoculating them with everything. They're probably getting some kind of doctor checkup every day or every other day or something. Maybe they know, and maybe he really is lagging. But wouldn't they know before it came to that he was lagging? Wouldn't they just euthanize him in his sleep or something?
Couldn't it just use a tank? Couldn't he be a tank driver then?
Or yeah, like he might be great at other things.
They spent a lot of money on this child, and then they just shot him.
Dude, Jason Isaacs even complains about it later with his next gen after this about like, do you know how much it takes to feed you?
I mean, so much chicken.
Dude, did you see a chicken in this entire movie? There's a reason for that.
They're eating him wholesale. Yeah,
nervous chicken.
They said on set Russell just had one hand of salmon and then one hand of chicken, just kind of eating the entire time. Loading.
I believe it was probably like when Hugh Jackman, after the first X-Men movie, how he was just always training and always trying to stay pumped up for like his shoulder veins and stuff. They said it was just like dumbbells and chicken breasts off screen all the time.
Kurt Russell. I mean, that's how Hugh Jackman learned from that. But in this movie, right? So you have Curdy, old Blue Eyes, and the other soldiers going through all their missions, blah, 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 walking in straight lines. And you have Jason Isaacs coming in with the super soldiers. And he just wants to kill off the other soldiers. But there's no reason to kill off the other soldiers because they're just human.
They're still pretty damn good soldiers.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like they're glitching androids from Blade Runner. These are very good soldiers who can fly planes, who can operate vehicles. So there's no reason to prove a point on a chain fight 40 feet off the ground to kill off three of them.
Now, their training and their genetics basically put them just shy of Starship Troopers meets Universal Soldier.
Yeah, exactly.
Both movies, by the way, came out before this.
Love those movies. I mean, this, I mean, do you know the script was written 15 years prior? Kind of feels like it, right? But, so... Well, I just don't understand why they wanted to waste these other troops. I'm like, these guys are perfectly fine. I don't know. And they were obviously smarter. So did they make the other characters? Are these other super soldiers dumb?
No, I think that they are just more conditioned, and so they don't think as much for themselves.
Got it. Because there's that scene at the end where Kurt Russell's just creeping up on Jason Scott Lee in the vehicle, and Jason Scott Lee's like, "Hey, you're 50 yards away when you're pulling off soon." Hey, you're 40 yards away when you're pulling off soon. Hey, you're 10 yards away when you're pulling off soon. Like, he just, he kind of let Russell punk him on that.
Yeah. That part of that just makes me want to think it made for a good dramatic scene.
Yeah.
By the way, speaking of good dramatic scenes, when they were showing Russell's training with his troops as they're just walking in straight line shooting, they did the Argentine moons, right?
Yeah.
So they're wearing spacesuits because there's not oxygen, but they're shooting the same weapons, which require a nickel and oxygen ignition.
Those are special Argentine moon bullets.
Well, they look like the same exact guns.
Developed by Wayland Yutani.
Right.
Yeah.
I'd almost expect to see that with all the throwbacks, because again, it's very Universal Soldier. In execution, it's very, well, not very, it's a little Starship Troopers-y, in presentation of training on screen,
it's Shane.
Another movie that I only saw because of my Uncle Rick.
Nice. That's a great, that's a great, just old school, dude movie, Shane.
So, right. And I only saw it when I was younger with him, by the way. It's there's that classic scene at the end where everyone thinks he's riding off, and then other people would say no, he's dead, he's slumped over in the closing scene of Shane.
But this one doesn't do that. Oh, are you talking? Wait, I don't remember the closing shot of Shane. You got me thinking about The Searchers when John Wayne walks out of the doorframe into nowhere. I'm mixing up my westerns.
I'll pull it back. So Jason Isaacs has his super fancy pants soldiers, right? And he's saying how Kurt Russell and all of them. He's talking to Gary Busey now. right? About how his soldiers are obsolete, how his are better in every